All right, well, we are going to call this meeting to order. And do we have any public comment for agenda and non-agenda items? All right, well, let's jump right into it with the legislative update.
All right, good evening. This is my first time in the hot seat, so good to see you all. So today, it's pretty light. Legislators have not been in session. They will be back in.
Tomorrow, Wednesday, and then one day next week.
Okay. So today we want to talk. Yeah. So today we're going to talk a little bit about our kind of level setting for the beginning of this school year and my position in this role. We want to talk about our legislative platform guiding principles review, so that we can give Rusty here some guidance as far as what our positions are on things, so that we're not constantly having to come together to make those decisions. Obviously, the big ones we still will. Then we want to talk about our calendar, legislative luncheon, Capitol Day, and get the ball rolling on getting those things on the books.
That sounds good. So we're going to kick things off with the legislative update, if you guys don't mind.
Great.
All
All right.
Take it away.
Thank you. Good. Well, it's great to see everybody again. Is my mic on? Do I need it to be on? So I just want to do a couple of things. The budget was passed. It was a historic investment in K-12. A number of very positive things and dollars spent particularly around grow your own teacher programs and recruitment of teachers, which for those of us who have kicked around this space for a while, that is a new development in terms of wanting to recruit and retain and do things for our teaching community. So that's very, very positive. And so I know there's lots of opportunity there for funds. There's about $7 billion left in the extra for the state budget. It's split pretty evenly between general fund and school aid. And the good news is that is predominantly not federal funds anymore and mostly just state funds, so less restrictions on those. So they're looking at possibly this week or next doing a supplemental budget. It'd likely be around economic development. Site development seems to be the big thing that they're working on. If you remember when Ford made its big announcement to go to Tennessee, one of the big pieces was that they had 500 acres assembled and ready to go. So site development would be a big part of that. But predominantly everyone is out in their districts and thinking about the general election, which is obviously in November. And we'll get a lot of sense from that what will happen in lame duck. For example, if you end up with the status quo where the legislature remains Republican and the Democratic governor remains, you probably will have a fairly healthy lame duck because it'll just be an extension of what's going to happen in the next year, and they'll get to work and sort of move forward. If you have one of the chambers or both of them flip, which is certainly a possibility, then you likely would have a light lame duck because the governor would want to work with a larger Democratic majority as they go into the next year, and so you may not have something as robust in lame duck. But it's sort of hard to say where they might be in lame duck and where they might go. You could have very busy or you could have a very tame lame duck. So in terms of legislation, there doesn't seem to be a ton on the policy side for education. You do have a couple of ballot initiatives that were turned in. Let My Kids Learn is the name of the effort. That would be two proposals. One would create the ability to do scholarships for private institutions, public institutions. The second part of that would allow folks to do up to a $500 credit up to $500 million. There's lots of argument on both sides whether that's a good or a bad thing. The nuts and bolts of it, which I think is most useful for us here, is the fact that the signatures were turned in. They would need to go before the State Board of Canvassers to be certified, and once they're certified, they would then go to the legislature, which has a certain amount of time to deal with that. They can either pass it, where it becomes law without the governor's signature, or they could send it to the ballot, or they could do an alternative proposal and send both to the ballot. So that's sort of the way that those work. And the likelihood is that the folks, the proponents of that would be pushing for the legislature to just adopt it and not have, not need a gubernatorial signature. So that will not be on the ballot, but will be certified somewhere between now and the election, would be my guess in terms of when the Board of Canvassers would certify
My
that.
understanding is that that is not, those pieces of legislation are not particularly helpful to public schools. Is that correct?
There is a strong feeling among the public school community that those are not helpful. Absolutely. Yep, I think that's accurate. So that would
So
be.
what are the possible consequences to public schools? Just a smaller pool of funds?
So a couple of arguments that I've sort of heard floating around. One is it's an end around the Constitution that doesn't allow state dollars to go to vouchers because you're giving a tax credit. There's that. Obviously, you know, that pool of money could be spread out among more recipients. And so the feeling is that this really is sort of a slippery slope towards trying to overturn the amendment or the ban in the
And
Constitution.
is this the one that Betsy DeVos backed?
My understanding is she's part of that, yes. Yep.
So there may not be a large immediate consequence other than the fact that it might lead to a later constitutional question about its legality.
I think that's right. I think that's right. I mean, there is precedent that if it did happen, then public schools could go after those donations as well. So, you know, that is out there. I mean, the reality of whether that happens, I don't know, but it's not specific as to who could get those donations for folks to get a tax credit.
But isn't this really the beginning of vouchers? I mean, if we let this one go, will there be another one that's bigger and worse for us? Because,
That certainly is one of the arguments that's out there, absolutely. Mhm. So that will not be on the ballot. That will likely be a fight in the legislature in lame duck. The ballot right now has term limits and reproductive rights will both be on the ballot in November. So those are the big issues that we'll see on the ballot. The term limits proposal would allow for 12 years to serve in any one chamber or both chambers, but you would have a 12-year limit. Right now it's 14 years, 6 in the House and 8 in the Senate. But this would allow you to serve 12 years. Also includes some financial transparency. There isn't a huge push against it with any dollars in opposition. My prediction would be that it passes. So there's lots of us in the lobby community who think that would be a positive to have some folks with a longer runway when dealing with billions and billions and billions of dollars in the state budget. So that's sort of where we are in the legislature.
Any questions on any of those items?
Oh, so just real quick though, the let my children learn piece, which I wouldn't expect it, but if the legislature decided not to deal with it during lame duck, it would be put on a future ballot, I guess then.
Yeah, and I can remember, Russ, I don't know if that would be May or if it would be August or if it would be November. I'm not 100% sure. The likelihood that it isn't dealt with by the legislature is pretty small.
So with that last thing, with the legislature dealing with it, if it isn't approved, is it then dead, or?
If the legislature does nothing with it, it does go to the ballot.
So we go
So-
to a future ballot?
So from the legislative perspective, either they can approve it, or, I mean, they can't kill it, per se.
No, they can either approve it, they can do nothing and have it go on the ballot, or they can propose an alternative where both would go
Gotcha.
on the ballot.
Yeah, thank you.
So and we're knee deep in the electoral woods, but that's sort of the three options that they have, yeah. In terms of an election update, everybody's out in their districts. The governor appears to have a sizable lead in most polls. People think that the House and the Senate are both up for grabs and up in the air. You have sort of an unprecedented process by which new lines were drawn. And that's not a positive or negative statement about that, it's just different. And so you have districts that look vastly different than previous iterations of redistricting, whether Democrat or Republican. They're just different. You have one district that runs the almost half of the length of the Lower Peninsula, and it never is more than 6 miles wide. Just goes all the way up to Lakeshore because the commission decided water was a community of interest when they were sort of doing their decision making. And so they're very, very different. You know, I always tell the story. I was sitting at Gravity eating lunch, and Congressman Moulinar called me and said, "Hey, Rusty, don't you live in Virgins?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I'm going to be your new congressman." I'm like, "What?" So, okay. And he's from Midland.
Was it a warning? You could move.
Right, exactly, right, right, exactly. So everybody's sort of out on the campaign trail. You know, everybody's trying to raise dollars. So that's sort of where we are in the election update.
Yeah, thanks for that. Nobody in the room would know what you're talking about, but, you know. Appreciate that.
Me neither. Me neither.
All right. Well, so we just completed the election overview, and Rusty, is there anything else that you have on the agenda that you would like to
Yeah, yep, I
cover?
can
Are
run
we-
through the other ones, if that's all right, Leon, that's okay?
Please, yeah.
So the legislative platform, this is something that you guys have worked through over time to get to a point where it's I almost call it a filter document. Take whatever issue is out there, we filter it through your guiding principles, and then come back with a recommendation, rather than having 6 pages of priorities. I would say this from from council's help: if there are things that are critical that you would like to see included in that platform, you know, if we could get that to Leon and I, we can sort of go through those things. If there are things that are of issue, there's going to have to be some changes in terms of some of the critical shortage stuff has been solved. In terms of some of the requests for temporarily suspending teacher evals, and those things, they would sort of move into the more overall reform of the laws that they're done, rather than a temporary rollback. So some of those things we'll have to work through as we get closer to the new year. But I wanted to just make sure that that was on everybody's radar to consider. If there are things, obviously, Committee Member Lewis does work on the MASB board, and if there are things that are out there that we should consider, we'll all be looking at those things. But I know the board has been good about getting issues that are important to them, and so we want to make sure that we have a robust agenda, but one that fits into the guiding principles.
Does our platform matter for the fall, or is this something that we should be preparing for the new?
I would say for the new session. You know, this would inform our legislative luncheon, our Capitol Day, all of those things. They sort of fit in.
So things should look a lot different by then. So other than this ballot proposal, the legislative around the donations to, that's really like the only thing, and it seems like we might want to just assume that they'll.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll want to engage and have a position, so that legislators from your area know what the position of the Grand Rapids Public Schools is on this.
Tell me what again? I didn't hear all of that.
The issue that you're concerned about,
The let my kids learn.
Let my kids learn, is that we should, that's something that we should make a point on now. The other stuff is more long-term, that we should, anything else like that we should be.
I don't see anything sort of on the horizon.
Do you see this as something that we should bring before the whole board? And
Not necessarily, but in the overview, we can just give an update. But
Rusty thinks that we might want to weigh in on it.
I'm sorry,
But I think the legislative committee can take that stance and then make the
Right.
recommendation to the full
Oh, I see.
board.
Yeah, yep. But you would be notable by your absence if you didn't say something about it. I guess I would say it that way.
Voting or absent.
And in the event that it is not something that the legislature supports, which should we Because for it to stand on its own, what are the pros and cons of that issue being on the ballot alone versus having an opposing issue on the ballot with it?
Depending on what side you're on, it's probably more easily defeated on the ballot than it would be at the
If it hasn't, right.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we don't know what side we're on, but I think we know what side we're
Well,
on.
we know
We can make
that,
some assumptions.
we know that that public school authorities is a prospective threat. So
Right, and that's who we're here to protect, so.
Yeah, and I'm certainly happy to sort of prepare a little memo on it and put some pros and cons, knowing that these aren't the opinion of me, but you can do some pros and cons and so that folks can take a look at it. We're happy to do that, if that helps.
Yeah, and I think I'm just like looking ahead to if we have a position also asking legislators what we're hoping, which action we hope that they
Sure.
take.
Yep, whether they vote
And
for
why?
or against.
Right,
I think
and
we
why?
have to have a record as to why we
Rationale.
might want it to go to the ballot instead of.
So is there a time frame on that?
So it looks like this is, I mean,
This
the
would be
time,
This would be a lame duck issue.
yeah.
Oh, lame duck issue. but-
Yep.
So at least that first step, hoping that will they decide both of those things at once, whether or not they'll take action?
So it goes to the Board of Canvassers first, and they decide whether or not there's enough valid signatures. My guess is that that will go to court. Someone will challenge the Board of Canvassers, or they won't get the votes that they need in order to pass it, so someone will likely challenge it. And then, so then it would just have to work its way through the courts in order to have it officially certified and be able to be in front of the legislature. So
And to be able to be on the ballot, or will it not get on the ballot?
So again, they certify it, and whether there's a court challenge or not, ultimately, they'll be looking for certification. If that happens, it then goes to the legislature, and they have, I think it's 45 days.
Oh, okay.
Don't quote me, but I think it is.
So it won't get on the ballot without the legislature doing something, is that?
It would only
No,
go-
it will. If they do nothing, then
choose
it
to
goes
do
to the ballot, but they can approve it.
A future ballot.
Okay, okay, okay.
Sorry.
But the legislature approves it, then it's a done deal. If they do nothing, then it goes to
In
the
the
ballot.
future, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Or they can have an alternative. So our position really though, let's say if we weren't in support of it, it's really, we'll be asking our folks in Lansing to, I mean, it's really, I won't say it's a no-win situation. I mean, either it's gonna be approved by the legislature or it's gonna go to ballot likely. And do we think I mean, then I guess that's just another thing to deal with at that point, another sort of, I don't know, campaign effort of sorts against it on our part if it does go to ballot. So guess we'll cross that bridge if and when we get there.
Yep, and certification is really the key thing where makes sense for you guys to weigh in once there's certification.
Yeah. And timetable on that though, Board of Canvassers, when, do you have any sense on when it would be?
There's a
in front of-
meeting Thursday. I don't have an agenda, so I haven't not seen it on there. And then there's another one in October and another one in November. The people that got the signatures will be pushing for it to be on the agenda. And the people who oppose it will be hoping that it's not on the agenda, so.
Right.
And how many votes does this have to clear the governor?
Yep, so you would have to get 56 in the House and 20 in the Senate in order to approve the ballot or the initiated law, because it's an initiated law. You'd have 56 and 20 to approve the initiated law, which then would not require the governor's signature.
And do you think that's likely or not likely?
It's a fair question. I think you'll have, I think it'll be a slog to get to 56 in the House. I think the Senate's probably a little easier for the yes votes.
But the governor, is she on record saying she's a no on this?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Any more questions or comments with the legislative platform?
Sounds like we probably need to, when
Yeah, so definitely we've had this platform for quite some time. We've had small tweaks to it. But, Rusty highlighted some of the things that, we may have moved past at this point. But I think that is a conversation to have, just to see if this is really next year's work. So, what may be, and I think getting through, I'm sorry, I'm thinking things while I'm saying it,
no,
but
absolutely.
getting through general election will also inform what some of those issues will be.
Yep.
So this will not be the last conversation about that, but I think it's a good time to start thinking about what may be of importance.
But it sounds like for this one.
For this one
we need to
issue.
Discuss it by the next meeting.
Yes, so I know, Rusty, you said that you would put together pros and cons
Yeah, I'm happy to
for
do that.
us. And so we'll share that with the committee, and we can likely, well, our next meeting is,
October.
Over or something, yeah.
are we monthly? I don't think,
Yeah, we're monthly.
this committee is?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, then we'll have time to to take a look.
I'll
Yeah,
send
so
it to
summer
you,
to
and
summer.
then you and I can
Okay.
work through it, and then you
October
can send it along to the
17th.
committee, if
Okay,
that's
perfect.
okay.
Okay,
Yeah, that'll be
That
the
work?
last one. before
That
the
sounds
election,
good.
so
Perfect.
next week.
Okay, so October 17th, we'll take action on that. And then for the calendar, are we setting dates for the luncheon and Capitol Day?
So I was gonna give some broad ranges of when I thought it would be appropriate, and then maybe we could have, again, we're gonna have different members of the board, so some of this is difficult to try and get schedules, but my sense would be that second or third week in February to do the luncheon, is historically when we've done that. And then towards the end of April, beginning of May is when we've done our Capitol Day. And if folks are comfortable with that, I can work with Leon and others to try and find some good dates that work for the most people.
You could even invite some of the ex-board members.
Could be in the neighborhood. Yeah, I think
I know
that-
at least one of them will be invited. I know at least one.
I think, we know the earlier that we get to work on the dates, the better turnout we have and the better meetings that we
Yep.
can set up, so.
so it'd be prudent to set these dates even though we don't know what, okay.
Yep. And then we'll just inform new board members that these are the dates, and we really need your participation, and the existing board members can help encourage
Yeah,
the new board
so
members.
if they set the dates, then you guys gotta at least show up. Just in case it doesn't work for anyone else. But we don't, it doesn't have to be we never have the full board in attendance.
Yeah. Right.
So if we have 2 or 3 members, that's a strong turnout.
And the legislative priorities, we will do that next year. Okay.
So it should be noted, Leon, that John and Rusty worked for the 14 years I've been on the board to get all that done. And then we did it. So now, that's your job.
No pressure.
We're gonna be a
Looking
great,
at this list, I was like, yeah, we got that.
we're gonna be a great team.
Money?
There's still some things to work on there. There's still some good projects to work on.
Okay, do we have any other business?
I don't think so. Thank you.
All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.